Do you like Dungeons and Dragons? Do you like MMOs? Well, good news for you. There's a Dungeons and Dragons MMO, and it's called NeverWinter. Well, actually, there's two, but today we're talking about NeverWinter. So today I'm going to tell you about it to help you decide whether or not you think it's worth playing or not. Let's start by talking about NeverWinter's story. NeverWinter takes its stories from multiple D&D modules and campaigns and sort of changes them up a bit to help more facilitate gaming. This means the stories themselves are fairly well written, but the voice acting is a little bit odd. Sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's not so much. And what is and isn't voice acted, it seems like they just decide by, funnily enough, rolling a die. I mean, we'll have some things that are completely voice acted, including the text box, and it says exactly what it says in the text box. And sometimes there'll be a text box, but the voice acting doesn't match it at all. And sometimes there's no voice acting when there's a text box on screen. Sometimes it only voice acts the first few lines. I'm not sure what came to the decision that this needed to be a thing, but it is. But for the most part, it doesn't really detract. I just do wish that it would be 100% voice acted so I didn't have to read, because I don't really know how. Overall, the story's pretty alright, and there are quite a few different ones to go through. As you progress through the main campaign, you'll go through multiple different adventures and multiple different campaigns. Typically with some basic go here, do this, kill X amount of enemies, get X amount of items, quests, and then it'll end with a short dungeon-esque experience where you enter an instanced area, you go through, you maybe solve some puzzles, and then you fight a boss. Overall, the story and the basic main storyline are well designed. It's just kind of odd because sometimes you'll be doing something helping the king, and then the next thing you're helping some random villager. It doesn't really feel like you're moving up the adventure ranks. Now let's talk about PvP. PvP in NeverWinter is fairly standard. It's instance, so you just go in, you fight some other players, and then when you're done, you're awarded with some special currency that you use to buy some special PvP gear. There's nothing too innovative about the PvP, but there's nothing really to complain about either. If you like the combat of this game, PvP would probably be a great draw for you. So with that brings us to talking about the combat of NeverWinter. It is probably, in my opinion, its biggest draw, and for a lot of people, its only draw. But that doesn't mean that you still shouldn't play this game, because the combat is honestly amazing. I mean, it's super simplistic, but at the same time, there's lots of nuances, which means you can always improve the way that you do combat in this game. And even though it's simplistic, everything just feels right. If an attack is meant to be strong, it feels strong, even if it doesn't do a lot of damage. The sound effects, the weight behind every attack, it just feels good. Nothing really feels all too floaty, and for the most part, it just works. Combat is really well designed, and there are no complaints here from me. Only good things to say. But with that being the game's only real good thing, I mean, it's kind of difficult to recommend this game simply for the next aspect that we're going to talk about, and that's its monetization. NeverWinter is what a lot of people like to call a treadmill MMO, meaning when you get to endgame, you're going to be doing dungeons with the hope of getting better gear or currency that you can use to buy better gear, etc., etc. And once you finally get all that better gear, typically there'll be an update, and the gear that you just spent forever getting is now made useless, and you have to go do new dungeons to get even stronger, even better gear. Lots of people like that, except for the fact that this treadmill is set so quickly that you're just going to fall off if you stop for even a couple of days. Well, how can you get around that? Well, you can pay money. That's a good thing. You can pay money to help speed up your character's progression and basically just not have to do anything. At some point, it literally becomes more efficient to go work than it is to grind out gear. And in this game, that is definitely the case. You can buy Zen, which is Cryptic Studios' premium currency, and then you can use that Zen to buy Astral Diamonds. Astral Diamonds are basically the currency that you use on the auction house, meaning you can just buy currency to buy anything from any other player. So if you can sell it, if you can trade it, you can buy it with real money in this game. The flip side of that is you buy Astral Diamonds from people who are selling Astral Diamonds for Zen. So you can buy Zen with Astral Diamonds. It just takes an absurd amount of time. To buy anything worthwhile, to get about $10 worth of Zen, you're going to have to farm for probably about a month. And considering that the average pay in the US probably sits around $10 an hour, a month worth of repetitive grinding versus going to work for an hour, it really is a difficult choice, especially depending on what job you work. If you don't like your job, you might prefer the month of repetitive grinding, but that's neither here nor there. In this game, you can buy basically everything. Like I said, if you can trade it, you can buy it. And then there are also things that you can only buy with real money or with Zen. And these things include things like locked playable races, increases to stats. If you get the VIP, which is basically a monthly subscription, you have a complete stats increase. 1% extra health for yourself and everybody in your group. 1% might not sound like a lot, but it might make the difference at an endgame raid. It's just kind of ridiculous, especially when you take into consideration the fact that these playable races do have stats tied to them. Each playable race that you try will have certain bonuses. Humans have 1% bonus to all stats, and then you can pick +3 to any ability score. So when you take into consideration that if you look up the best builds for any type of build, at the top is typically going to be Metallic Ancestry Dragonborn, which is locked behind a paywall, and there's no surprise why that one's always at the top. You receive 5% more healing, +2 to any ability score, 3% critical strike, 3% power. I mean, that's very strong. And then the ones below that are typically like Dragonborn, Gith. There are a lot of extra races that you have to pay for, and they're just the best for any build. So with that being said, the endgame for this game isn't great. It certainly isn't stellar by any imagination. You're going to spend tons of your time grinding, or you're going to have to open up your wallet. But there's tons of content before then. You go through all of the adventures, and the combat makes it fun. I mean, I played recently with my partner, and we just went through all of the adventures. We popped on an audiobook, and it was tons of fun. And you'll have tons of content to get to before you even have to start thinking about doing any sort of repetitive grinding. So with it being free to play, I mean, personally, I would say there's nothing for you to lose by checking it out, but I certainly wouldn't expect this to be your next home MMO. There are better options out there. If you like good combat, you've got Black Desert Online or Elder Scrolls Online. If you want a good story, you can go to Final Fantasy, or you could go to Star Wars The Old Republic, but this game's free, and you'll probably have at least a few hours of fun out of it if you check it out. I wouldn't recommend going into this with it being the expectation that it will be your next main MMO, but it certainly is good. It's just got lots of downfalls from its publisher, as Cryptic Studios has proven in the past they like to do with their games. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you like the video, leave a like. If you don't, well then, leave a dislike. And leave a comment of any other MMOs that you'd like me to check out and talk about in the future.